Huh. Half price pancake.
Hi, I'm John Lennon.
And I'm Ringo Starr.
I'm Bono.
Okay, I'm Ben, that's Stefan, and that's Michael. And
You
we
should have gotten
are-
that's Bono.
And we are
Animating in
Threes. We are an animation podcast where we discuss and talk about an animated film or series every week, except for a few weeks ago, but we've already talked about that last week. And this week, Michael is going to present The Yellow Submarine, the 1968 cult classic, apparently.
It's not really a cult classic. The reason I picked it is because nobody talks about it.
Well, before we delve into it, we need to talk about Toons we've tuned into.
Oh, my favourite segment.
I want to pick something else, but they're gonna not let me.
No, we insist that's a very good name,
No,
Ben.
I
We
like
should
mocking
use,
it every
We
week.
should use it every single time.
Well,
So,
Michael,
Michael, what have you been watching animated-wise?
Well, I finally watched Yellow Submarine.
That was the thing you were meant to watch.
Then nothing.
what have you been watching, Stefan?
Okay, so I finally finished Hilda.
Yay!
The Netflix series?
I like how you pick one animated show, then we discuss it for 5 weeks.
No, because I took a
You
while-
just move to the next one.
I take a while to watch things, but no, now...
Actually, you do, because you messaged me at like 4 in the afternoon that you started watching Yellow Submarine, and you texted me finished at like midnight.
That was a different case. I had to pause that because of just trying to gather my mind.
It shouldn't take 7 hours to watch, or however long it took.
Anyhow, I really love the ending of Hilda. I don't want to spoil anything, but it really has such a great heart to it. It's got real warmth in terms of how its characters interact with her problems and all the fantastical creatures. The animation is pretty much on top of itself every episode. The episodic nature of how they introduce a new, interesting, fantastical situation gets more and more interesting until it gets to the climax. I think it's really, really great, and it's definitely worth a watch, and I really hope it gets a season 2.
It is.
It is? Is it actually confirmed?
Yeah.
That's great. I think that'll be awesome.
And you hear that review, Netflix? That was a great review. Now pay us money.
Cut that out, man.
No! I want Netflix to sponsor us, even though we get bugger all views every week.
What else have I been watching? No, I've just been continuing Miraculous still, and not much in terms of new series. So,
Well, Steph and I have been watching Amphibia still. That's still going strong. We actually watched an episode this morning before we started the podcast. And Stefan just kept laughing at... So, one of the characters, Sprig, he got sick. And then one of his symptoms is, because he's a frog, his tongue just leaps out at people because it's swollen. And
Yeah,
he kept
just-
laughing.
It to do it at such random times, and usually in animation, you usually have an anticipation before an action, like you'd lean back before you push forward to release the tongue. No, this tongue just comes spread out at random intervals, and it's usually at the worst possible times. It's just hilarious. I've been finding that there's a lot more meta humor and references than any other Disney show.
There was a Lord of the Rings reference, a Star Wars reference, a Sonic reference.
An Indiana Jones reference. There's so many.
But it's all worked organically in as well, so it doesn't feel like too on the nose or anything.
No, I think the most on the nose one was the Lord of the Rings reference where they literally said the line.
Actually, I might show Michael.
No,
Oh,
but
no.
yeah, it was a really. I really think it's going really
Can't
strong.
watch animated things during the week, Ben. You know this.
But yeah, Amphibia, get to it. Unless you're in Australia
Hop
like
to
us.
it.
Oh, it was a frog pun because they're lizards.
Ribbit. Apart from Amphibia, I've been continuing watching the Clone Wars 3D animated show. Again, it's just the animation gets noticeably better as it goes on, which is good.
People always say that the biggest differences between season 1 and 3. What's season 2 like in terms of rendering?
It's similar to season 1, more similar to season 1, but again, it just develops through.
I'm guessing the animation itself would be better in season 2, and then season 3 the rendering would catch up.
Yeah.
Because usually that's how it goes with these sort of shows.
But because season 3 onwards is a lot better, a lot of people just disregard season 1 and 2, but having finished season 1, I still think it's pretty solid. I've continued watching Archer. That's just Archer, I guess. That's the only way to describe it.
Space!
And the first episode of Final Space Season 2 came out.
Oh, is it good?
Yes, I think it starts off a lot more solidly than the first season because you already know all the characters. So it's able to get into it straight away, which is better because it took a while for the plot to catch up in the first season.
Any noticeable like animation things that happen, like fun set pieces or stuff?
They use a bit more 3D, especially since one of the characters is mostly 3D now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, is a new/old character. I'm not going to spoil it. But,
Yeah, that's all good.
but it's really fun, and it's like if you like Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff, this is the thing for you. And that is all we've been tuning into, apart from other live action stuff, I guess. But we're not talking about that.
The only thing I watch, because I hate animation.
Okay, Michael, you are going to present the Yellow Submarine now, so do it.
You're so aggressive.
Do the Beatles ever really even need an introduction? Alright, so the Beatles...
They're a band. They're like the most famous band during the 60s and 70s and 50s. There were 4 guys: Ringo Starr, John Lennon, Paul McCartney,
And Steve.
and George Harrison.
So you
Yes.
say Ringo Starr first.
Look, he's the main character of this film. He's the main Beatles. As
I
far
don't
as
even
I'm
think
concerned.
Ringo would say his name first.
No, but yeah, they were the most famous band of the time. They famously quoted that they were bigger than Jesus.
Yeah. You know who the Beatles are.
I mean, if you don't, just go on YouTube and look up some songs.
Yeah.
I bet you know at least one of their songs.
There's even a movie recently that's coming out, which is like a homage to all the Beatles songs called Yesterday.
Which is why Michael picked...
Actually, are we doing... Yeah, no, I picked this. That's why I did it. Exactly what Stefan said. You got a handle on it. They're an English rock band formed in Liverpool in 1960 and disbanded in 1969. 2 of them are dead, 2 of them are old.
Oh, go figures.
And that's the podcast, folks.
Yeah, one of the most influential bands in music history. Started off famously as the Quarrymen before transitioning into, the name we know today, which is a pun. And yeah, extremely influential. I remember being told recently that Paul McCartney said that he doesn't he doesn't want to sound arrogant, but he says, I know in 100 years from now when people are reading history books that my name will be in there.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but someone was telling me about it. Like, what an insane notion for someone to, a realization for someone to have that you've been that kind of globally influential that you'll be that you're no longer even like a person. You're like an influencer, like this kind of social force.
To be fair, we'll all have our names in the obituaries.
So yeah, globally influential on kind of the broader music scene, pretty much responsible for really kind of catalyzing kind of the entire kind of rock and roll movement in the 1960s.
After Elvis, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Well, it made it more popularized because back then rock and roll was still very the niche thing that all the hipster guys who flicked coins
It's
would
the devil's
listen to.
music.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Kind of a cornerstone of the mid 1960s kind of underground mod movement. Famously, they started off in kind of like an underground jazzy kind of venue called the Cavern Club.
So where did this film come from?
Hold on, they're basically directly responsible for the heavy metal movement. With Helter Skelter.
What?
Not movement, sorry, the genre basically. And no one has a career trajectory like the Beatles. Like, the one that comes kind of the closest is the Beach Boys, that started off as kind of like a teeny bopper band, then went into kind of an experimental phase.
Or the Monkees. I reckon the Monkees had a similar line of... They started with a TV show.
Yeah, but I'd say the Monkees is less sincere. The Monkees is very much kind of manufactured.
Yeah, they were a product.
But yeah, it's a band comprised solely of globally recognized iconography. It's insane.
And even all of them, maybe not Ringo, but have had solo careers after they split up as well.
A lot of this is going to be shitting on Ringo Starr.
But which is amazing in itself as well.
No, yeah, exactly. I went to see Paul McCartney a couple of months ago. When he came to Melbourne, and yeah, each of these people have had incredibly successful careers. Like John Lennon's, unfortunately, was cut very short.
And George Harrison's too.
In 1980. But even George Harrison had a relatively successful solo career. I mean, he didn't pass away until 2001, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they all lived incredibly kind of eventful, successful lives. Obviously, they changed the face of music.
Do you know, out of all the Beatles after their separation, George Harrison was the first one to have a #1 hit out of them all?
Was it Set on You?
I don't know.
I think it would be
I just
Set
know
on
that
You.
one fact from Millionaire Hot Seat.
Obviously, with fame and fortune comes picture deals. And the Beatles were had the opportunity to develop a couple of motion pictures in which they starred in. Previously, they did a feature called Help.
Is that live action?
Yeah, that one is
Okay,
live action.
yeah.
But they did a feature called Help, which the band reportedly was unhappy with, and therefore were hesitant to do any, further motion pictures. But changed their mind upon seeing that the pitch for their next feature would be animated.
Weren't they going to do a Lord of the Rings film?
With the Beatles?
Yeah.
Oh no, Frodo.
I'm going to look this up. Just continue talking.
So yeah, in 1968, they produced Yellow Submarine, which was an animated musical fantasy, as it puts here. It leaves out all the psychedelia and nightmare imagery.
Who was it produced by? How was this even... I really am interested how this got past pitching stage. Or did it completely bank on the fact that it had Beatles iconography in it?
Okay, before we get started, Ben has just brought up a news article that says that in the mid-1960s, the Beatles wanted to star in a Lord of the Rings film directed by Stanley Kubrick?
And featuring original songs.
Okay, that sounds like a nightmare and a half. Quickly, John, we need to throw Ringo into the volcano to stop Sauron.
Oh no.
Oh no, there goes Ringo. Spy Ringo.
I'm just imagining them
Oh,
carrying
that's funny,
around...
Lord of the Ringo.
Yeah. Wait, was that your pun that you came up with?
No,
They gotta go
but it
through-
worked well.
The whole trilogy has just got to go throw Ringo in a volcano. So it's directed by one George Dunning, produced by Alex Brodax, with the screenplay by Lee Minoff. It goes for 87 minutes, which is longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it felt longer at parts.
It felt so long.
It was distributed by Apple Films, with a budget of £250,000.
Who was the production company?
Apple Films.
Oh, okay, so they do animation, I'm guessing.
I assume so, that's what it says.
Wow, who would have thought that the maker of my laptop does animations?
Not that Apple!
Oh.
Apple Records, the record deal that released all the Beatles studio
I
albums.
find it more likely that they got independent freelancers because nothing in this
Screams like
animation...
studio effort.
No, nothing screams unified effort. It seems like a lot of people did a lot of individual
It does
things.
seem collaborative, and I couldn't find too much information on the actual kind of developmental process behind the film and the animation. But luckily, the DVD I ordered of the film arrived a day late this morning, and it comes with a booklet filled with all the information I couldn't find on the internet.
So no one scans this and put it on the internet? Or
No,
anything?
so I'm going to read from this basically as my notes, thankfully.
Hooray!
I fell ass backwards into success. So one of the reasons I picked this, so we're going to go into kind of the production.
Is because you hate me?
That's partially.
Okay.
But I thought it would be really interesting to actually hear the Beatles voice act. And imagine my surprise and disappointment when I find out that John, Paul, George, and Ringo aren't voiced by the Beatles, but instead John is voiced by a different John. So, pretty close. John is voiced by John Clive, Paul is voiced by Jeffrey Hughes, George is voiced by Peter Batten, and Ringo and the Blue Meanie is voiced by Paul Angelis.
Wow.
However, they do make a cameo at the end, but we're not allowed to talk about that part because that's live action.
I think that's the best part of the film, almost. Okay, so there is extensive information about the production of Yellow Submarine in this booklet, very luckily. So, this is a quote from producer John Coates. The music, let's face it, was the inspiration for the whole film. It was a curiosity that this film went into production without a final script, without a final storyboard, and with a group of people who were so enthusiastically inspired by the Beatles' music that it got made within 11 months.
And it shows.
This is all news to me too, so we're learning about the film as we go. That's insane.
That's insane. Nothing in that makes sense. Like, this film should not even exist if that's the production
But
history.
hearing about
Wow.
it really does make sense from like when you're watching it, and
Well-
like, compared to what was out that in those days as well.
As far as I'm concerned, he continues, it remains a total miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, the film does look... It doesn't look cheap. It's quite experimental and psychedelic, but at the same time, it looks efficiently produced, if that makes sense.
Yes,
It
it does, yeah.
looks like it can be produced relatively quickly. Because it is kind of scrappy and rough and kind of dirty looking. But it still maintains that kind of, there's like a countercultural kind of whimsy to it.
I think that's simply because of how much there is in the film that you sort of look past that one or two frames maybe a bit cropped or a bit choppy.
The film and its creation were, indeed, miraculous. Directed by George Dunning and written by Lee Minoff, Al Brodax, Jack Mendelsohn, Eric Segal. Yellow Submarine began its voyage to the screen when Brodax, who had previously produced nearly 40 episodes of ABC's animated Beatles TV series, approached Beatles manager Brian Epstein with a unique vision for a full-length animated feature.
So wait, there was an animated Beatles series before this?
Yeah, the Beatles are kind of the poster child for,
Merchandising.
over merchandising.
But was that
a social
series
fad.
as surreal?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen much of it.
Like-
I can't imagine it would be.
I think it would be a lot more
everyone
grand
is-
in reality.
Because everyone associates kind of Beatles-centric psychedelia with Yellow Submarine. Not really. No one really speaks about the TV series. I know it exists.
This is the first I've heard of it.
Bolstered by the success of the animated television series and impressed by the artistry of Heinz Elderman's designs, Epstein agreed to the venture, and the Beatles contributed 4 original songs to the film. So the original songs I wrote were "It's All Too Much," "Only a Northern Song," "All Together Now," and "Hey Bulldog."
So Altogether was original, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like it. It feels, because it is a family film. It is meant for children, and "All Together Now" is kind of that quintessential.
Yeah.
Hey Bulldog was
Sing
the
along.
most forced-in song in that entire movie.
I did kind of like it. The
It was
sequence, at
so
least.
forced in. Like, it was just like, oh, look, there's a bulldog. Let's sing a song about a bulldog.
That's every song. That's a segue into every song.
oh,
of the
look,
film.
there's a nowhere
Oh,
man.
look,
Let's
there's
sing a song about a nowhere man.
Oh, look, there's a title of the song. Although, as Coates observed, the project went from initial designs to its London premiere in less than a year.
Ooh.
The entire process took nearly 2 years. Some 14 different scripts, Wait a minute! They said this kind of contradicts the initial information.
Yeah, but I think it could have been, like, on the way they were doing it.
Some 14 different scripts, 40 animators, and 140 technical artists. Rich, fluid, and completely entrancing, the film constituted a conscious revolt against the enshrined methods of animation, as well as a stylistic departure that encouraged the creation of culturally sophisticated images.
I will say, I'm actually really happy they went in a different direction with their design compared to, like, the Disney films.
Yeah,
and all
everyone
that.
talks about the Disney as being the high watermark for this kind of stuff, but
Like, The Jungle Book came out a year before this, so that's what you're
this is
comparing
when Disney
it to,
was kind of going into that. The animation kind of looks a little bit more rough and uninked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the lines are a little bit more. They look penciled.
But they still looked a bit more, like... They looked refined and more, like, company-controlled as opposed to this,
Oh, yeah.
which is what you just... reflected what you just said.
Yeah,
This is very much meant...
It's a far cry. This is completely experimental.
Yeah, and this
Everywhere.
felt like they wanted the artists to own whatever they made. And it really did feel like independent people putting their own ounces of creativity into it.
It's probably one of the few pluses that Stefan thinks of the film.
Oh, no, there's quite a few, but we'll get to that later.
So yeah, I made a note of this while I was watching it, but yeah, very obviously inspired by that generation's new trends in art. So Yellow Submarine heavily inspired by pop art styles of Andy Warhol and Martin Sharp.
Especially in the start, too.
Yeah.
get to that later.
As well as the op art creations of Bridget Riley.
Oh, there's so much surrealism. Like, without said, that there's classicalism with that surreal tendencies.
I even
written
think
all over it.
there's a lot of kind of like post-expressionism, kind of like pointillism,
Yep.
visual references in it.
There's also there's a lot of pieces that look like French impressionism. Just how they use colours.
Yes, it does. That's what I was. Yeah, we made that joke last week that like you can tell when animation looks French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This specifically took a lot of kind of like that classical French look when. But yeah, we'll get more into that. Oh yeah, and obviously heavily influenced by the imagery of Salvador Dali. We decided to bring in all the images familiar to the popular mind that we could, recalled Dunning. The film, apart from the story and plot, were designed as an experience, and I agree wholeheartedly.
It was
It's
an
an experience.
experience, whether
is an
it's positive or
experience.
negative, Stefan.
Yep.
So the filmmakers were on a quest for a fresh, highly stylized look. And after seeing just 4 of German poster artists, of course it was made by a poster artist, like Heinz Edelman's incredible drawings, they knew he was the right man for the job.
And so they decided to make every Beatle member look hideous.
Except John, for some reason, who kind of looks cute. Although Edelman had never worked on a film before, the animation he created was exciting and distinctive. We realised naturally, recalls Dunning, the dangers of being either too cartoony in style, the dangers of being either too cartoon in style or too realistic. But Edelman's drawings are in neither of those categories. His images are bold, not cuddly. His colours are bright, not pastel. And his characters are rectangular, not circular. Isn't the Blue Meanie just a circle?
Yep. And so is the Nowhere Man.
Okay.
I think he means like it's not
they're obtuse.
refined.
Yeah,
like it's not refined like Disney, and it's not too rough. It's in the middle. But for me, and if you were to compare it into like a modern day production standpoint, that just appears amateurish. Like, I'm not saying it meanly. I'm just saying like amateurish in the sense that it hasn't really got a clear. It's kind of just loud as opposed to being like refined.
No, again, it's not cohesive. It doesn't feel like they're. It simultaneously feels like it has a singular creative voice behind it, and it simultaneously feels like one distinct direction and a collaborative effort at the same time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Like an overall direction, but full of a lot of collaborators.
Like surrealist, post-expressionist psychedelia is the overarching visual aesthetic, but at the same time there are a lot of very different and distinct styles scattered throughout the film.
Oh, just for people who don't actually know what we're talking about, Impressionism, Expressionism, and all those are just art movements that existed during the 20th century. Like, they're all different
Or
aesthetics.
late 19th, I think, was...
when some of them
at
started.
least Expressionism, yeah. But yeah, it's kind of difficult to describe art movements. In a
Yeah,
podcast.
especially when we're talking about like animation.
But hey, at least our art stuff from high school is coming to use.
Yeah.
Oh
Hooray!
yeah, we're gonna talk about those lines, bro.
One of Yellow Submarine's signature innovations is its unique method of melding live-action photography with animation. This process is showcased in the Eleanor Rigby sequence, where realistic images from newsreel footage, cutout figures, and photographs of Liverpool are blended, rather than just superimposed to give striking perspective to scenes and fantastic effects to the story.
Yeah, that was towards the start, wasn't it?
Yeah. The really sad bit when
wait, London is depressing.
I love how grimy and terrible they make London look.
Yeah,
It's
we'll
great.
talk about that later, though.
Or Liverpool, at least. But the imagery of the sequence is novel for another reason. The people featured photographically in the Eleanor Rigby sequence are all members of the production team. So the gentleman with the pipe is created with a photograph of Brodix. The two men on the rooftop holding umbrellas are Dunning and Edelman. The girl taking a snapshot is background supervisor Alison Tavia. And the man in the telephone box and the fellow with the small leaping dog are both images of the film crew's favourite pub landlord. The proprietor of the Dog and Duck pub.
And again, all of this is in the booklet with the DVD.
We recommend paying $9.95 for this DVD just to get this kind of interesting booklet.
Or
in
you can
it.
just listen to this
I mean,
for
it's
free.
just a pamphlet.
I know. You can listen to this for free or pay $10. Either one.
Yeah, the film also scored a first when it achieved a unique three-dimensional effect. In the Eleanor Rigby sequence, as the sun rises over photo images of Liverpool and the camera moves from an aerial view of the city to a street-level shot, the animation becomes much more than two-dimensional. We talk about the multiplane camera a lot on the podcast, and I feel like this isn't such a far cry from that.
No.
Because you know what shot they're talking
Yeah,
about. It's a shot when it cuts to an establishing shot of Liverpool. It's right at the start.
It's odd that you reading all this, and a lot of this seems to be from this opening sequence, but because it kind of confirms in my mind that everything afterwards was just spontaneous and non-comprehensive. Like, a lot of these you're saying is like all based on the first 5 minutes. But the thing is, the rest of the film, which is an hour and 30 minutes long, looks nothing like that first 5 minutes.
It does not.
But they go on to say here that Brodax confesses that no animator has ever gotten a 3D effect. The unhappy truth is that we never got it again, no matter how many times we tried. But I feel like it looks like quite a simple multiplane camera effect. To achieve the film's colourful kaleidoscopic effect, the filmmakers use rotating polarized filters in front of an unchanging art, as can be seen in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The sequence where flickering hues enliven the images of the chorus girls, ballroom dancers, and carousel horses.
That's probably my favourite sequence.
That scene was very much using rotoscope.
Yes.
Yeah. We used 10 or 12 different film stocks. Yeah, so you're right there, Stefan. Says I think it's Brodax or Brodax. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but each with its own color characteristics to get the effects we wanted. Yellow Submarine also breathed new life into an old animation technique called rotoscoping.
Beat you to it, book.
Developed in the 1930s, rotoscoping is the process of tracing frame by frame the images from a strip of live-action film. Traditionally, it was used to guarantee accuracy when animating difficult movements or effects. Yellow Submarine, however, used the process with the opposite result. The realistic drawings become the basis for highly stylized drawings, as can be seen in Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. So the Beatles appear only briefly on screen. They embraced the film in the 1960s. They embraced it so much that they refused to be in most of it. After seeing the newly restored and remixed version, they were again struck by its captivating story, powerful visual impact, and lasting appeal of the songs.
Captivating story?
I mean,
No.
There is no plot. There is a plot, but it's the worst thing ever.
But we'll get
that's
to
not
it
the
after
point,
the notes.
Stefan.
Wait, they were captivated by the songs? They wrote the songs!
The film stands up really well, said Paul McCartney.
That was really good.
I'm not going to do the rest of it because it's terrible. It's very witty, very clever, and quite trippy. Yep.
I can agree with one of those
Thanks, Paul.
things.
He continued, George Harrison observed, Hines was brilliant, and I think he deserves maximum credit. Yellow Submarine is one of those cartoons that is there forever, Ringo Starr emphasized. That it's the music that matters. The music is the legacy, and in this case, it's surrounded by the film.
Well, it does have a
I
legacy.
suppose that's kind of apt. Like, the music is kind of the film is a vehicle for the music and the
Well,
kind of
yeah, the
visuals.
film would be nothing without the music. And I don't mean that horribly. I mean, this film would literally not exist if it didn't have this music.
So, yep, Yellow Submarine has indeed fulfilled its objective to take animation beyond anything ever seen before. It's
Oh,
achieved
yes, it sure has.
It's achieved this and so much more. The film is, as McCartney quotes, a piece of its time. But it is also a film with an appeal that is timeless. Yesterday, today, and forever, it demonstrates its enduring ability to unite, in story, spirit, and song, audiences of all ages.
Especially
Sure.
Stefan.
Yep, I'm feeling all that love. So
All you
unified.
need is love.
Yeah, no, stop,
Love.
stop.
Love is all you need.
Okay.
Glove is all. Glove is all. Yeah. It's glove.
So yeah, that's kind of the production history behind Yellow Submarine. Thank you to the printers of this DVD copy that did the most of the research for us.
Again, Michael just paid $10 for research for this podcast.
Research notes. I didn't use the DVD at all. I just want to point out on the billing block on the back of the DVD, it says starring Sgt. Pepper's Only Hearts Club Band, which I think is a cute way of saying the Beatles are not in this film.
No, aren't
Who
they?
are the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Band? Was that like a song of theirs, Michael?
Yeah.
Like, was it a... I likened it to Ziggy Stardust from Dave Bowie, but
Yeah, I think like I don't know for sure. Like I like the Beatles a lot, but I don't know everything about them. So everybody, what were your thoughts on Sir Reginald Dwight in The Beatles, Yellow Submarine?
First of all, there's going to be lots of spoilers. And just check down below in the description if you want to skip to anything. Yeah.
Opening thoughts?
I thought it was a charming film to a degree. So I really dug the style, and like throughout the whole film, that was probably the one thing that kept me entertained throughout it, because it's constantly changing and there's always something new happening, and that's just visually it's really interesting to watch. The plot is shit. It literally ignores the plot during
I
the
wouldn't
middle
be that
section.
cruel to it.
Okay,
I don't think the plot matters.
Okay, well, Stefan said this before, where you don't need any of the dialogue, really. It's just like, oh, you see the meanies attacking, you see this guy going to get
No,
the
it's
Beatles.
one of those things that's a pure, engrossing, like, visual experience.
Yeah.
That being said, I love the dialogue. I love how kind of quiet and bumbling and awkward it is.
It is very bumbling.
Yeah.
I did not understand a single thing the King Meanie said. Most of his dialogue consisted of... It was like, yep, I understand what's going on.
You should become a voice actor.
I kind of ignored him, but everything the Beatles said I thought was, like, kind of really cute and
I was so
charming.
deadpan and apathetic about everything.
I love the incredible amount of like apathy they have towards everything.
Oh,
Like,
they are
have
the most apathetic people ever.
I like what Ben said. Ben noted something like, they're the most apathetic idiots in this film. They just see everything and just go, oh no.
With an emphasis on the pathetic part.
No, but I thought it was. I liked this more than you did. I think.
Okay, let's hear Stefan's thoughts.
Oh, my thoughts. Oh, lovely. Okay. Oh, wait. Do you have anything else?
Are your thoughts from last week when I said what we were watching and you just screamed at me? Is that unchanged?
Oh, no. I reckon it's upgraded from screaming, so I can now word it. Okay, so as Ben was saying, I can appreciate the fact that it's the 1960s experimental animation, and it really goes out of its way to try different things, brand new color like animation styles, and the way it incorporates rotoscoping, all those kaleidoscope things and all the color combinations and all that. Really brilliant. the music for me, because it's Beatles music, everyone can at least respect and appreciate Beatles music. It's just got a nice melody to it. And so when it gets to the music, I can appreciate the visuals with it because it just brings me back to that time, that psychedelic time.
100%.
It brings you back to the time that you never lived.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree completely. When the music kicks in, it becomes it all clicks. It becomes that experience.
It really does. Yeah.
That's the problems that I find in that if this was a 10-minute music video, like a compilation of their songs with these visuals, I'd love it. I'd think this was a great art house piece. The fact that it's 130 minutes long, the plot is horrendous, the characters don't make sense, nothing is the sequencing is terrible.
And Ringo is the hero.
Ringo's the hero. That's the best part though. I love how Ringo's the hero. Everything looks horrendous. It looks horrifying. The designs are horrifying. Some things are great. There'll be a great gestural animation.
I think you settle into it. But at the same time, I think there is a lot of it when I'd question how, because it was critically acclaimed when it was released in the late.
For what?
Oh no, I think it's well deserving, but at the same time, I don't know what the sensibilities or the terror threshold for children was back then.
I don't think this is that terrifying.
I just
no, but there are elements that. Thinking back to how I kind of consumed media as a child, I would be confronted by this, I think.
Oh, okay.
If I was young. I think it would be a little bit too unnerving. Not in the way that's actively kind of malicious and scary, but in a way that's just kind of there's this weird kind of creepiness to the entire thing.
Because
is it Ringo's eyes?
I mean, yes.
Everything
but not
feels
just that.
Disjointed, and it just feels it feels like a world that we don't quite understand, and we never get a chance to understand.
No, and there's something about having white as your dominant colour that I think doesn't really do the film any favours.
Yeah, because that isn't really a thing in
It's
animation.
a spaceless environment.
Yeah.
Why does it exist?
It's a strange kind of... Yeah, it's
in a void.
A purgatorial void.
You said this was critically acclaimed. I do like the idea that this is a time where Chinatown can be released and have its lines like, Jake, forget about it, it's Chinatown. People go, oh, that's great. But did you see the Beatles film with, oh no, Ringo's fallen off the boat?
But the dialogue isn't the point. It's not the focus.
It's so
You're
meaningless,
animators. I thought you would have liked this.
I like it for the style.
I can appreciate some aspects, but I can really, in terms of when you're making an animated film, a part that's really important is the animated writing. In terms of writing this for an animated film, this is incomprehensible. This is just a bunch of artists who did gorgeous mats. There were some gorgeous surrealist paintings and little things in there.
Yeah.
But they're stuck together in a way that feels so mishmash. And although that can come to great effects in the Lucy in the Sky sequence, in terms of story and making it appealing to a larger audience, it feels so just disorientating. I don't know where to look.
Yeah,
This is the only...
This
is the only time I didn't write notes, because I was like, no, I know exactly what I want to say. I don't need notes for this.
You really don't. I mean, there are certain sequences that do stand out. But no, I agree completely that it kind of overstays its welcome. That a lot of it I think is a lot of it I think is visually striking, and for the first half an hour of the film I was completely on board with it. Just I thought this is just a trip. It's just a nice to kind of sit back, just kind of take in all this information, kind of enjoy the weird kind of quiet, awkward, aloof dialogue.
Really, where it falls flat is where they go back to Peppertown. Or
That's
whatever.
the bit when it lost me. I think the film is kind of it barely has a 3-act structure. It kind of it kind of does.
Well, do you want to talk about the story very quickly first?
All right, so there's
Good luck, Michael.
So there's a magical kingdom called Pepperland.
You lost me.
Okay. Which I think exists at the bottom of the sea or in some kind of weird 5th-dimensional plane of existence.
Drugs.
Drugs, yeah. It exists in... Yep, that's it. Got
Most of this film exists in drugs.
It's run by an elderly Lord Mayor and...
drugs.
And protected on a weird ethereal scale.
Drugs.
By Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Drugs.
More drugs. And they're attacked by a malicious but kind of bumbling group of villains called the Blue Meanies, who are rigidly opposed to music of any type. and one of either the Lord Mayor or one of his constituents, whatever, enlists the help of the Beatles. He goes to Liverpool. I like how he actually goes to Liverpool.
In a yellow submarine.
He goes to Liverpool in a yellow submarine, in a magical yellow, trans-dimensional yellow submarine. Collects the Beatles, who live in a labyrinthian hall of nightmares for some reason,
I actually really like that. We'll get back to it.
and bring them back to. They go on a voyage across the many seas, sky of blue, sea of green, whatever, to help fight the Blue Meanies and restore order to the Force and to Pepperland.
This was based off a short story, like a short picture book. Apparently, I read somewhere.
Was it?
Yeah, it was based off a short story written about the Yellow Submarine. They said it in the credits.
Okay. Basically, we're just going to be talking about... Because this doesn't really have a story as such, we're just going to be talking about sequences that we liked and disliked, I guess. In somewhat a loose order, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's going to be the structure today.
Before we go on, I like how the fact is that the three of the Beatles who had most of the writing parts were John, Paul, and George Harrison. Ringo is never really considered like one of the main Beatles who had an influential part, but he's like the main character in this film. He gets the most lines. He's the reason why the Nowhere Man saves the day at the end. Like, why does Ringo get so much of a focus? Like, I don't mind it.
I love how
It's
the Nowhere Man's name is just Jeremy.
No, it's
Boob, isn't it?
Jeremy Boob, PhD, Hillary as well.
No, but I love... Yeah, it's like his name is out of order when they give it on the card. Anyway, we'll get to a lot of that. But, yeah, there's so much, like we open... Immediately you get... We talked about this before. Incredible, like, post-impressionism vibes, surrealism. Especially, I made a note of saying Georges Seurat.
Yep.
Who was a French pioneer of the pointillism art movement. I thought like a lot of his kind of characteristics kind of punctuate a lot of the film's visuals.
Yep.
A lot of, like we talked about before, a lot of pop art influence, a lot of using pop culture imagery, like pulp novel imagery, comic imagery, especially magazine cutouts, using those in a lot of kind of stop motion portions throughout the film. A lot of surrealist Salvador Dali stuff.
I see post-impressionism in terms of... Because impressionism was very much drawing from light and drawing characters as what they see. Post-impressionism was sort of distorting proportions. And if you go to the start, the characters limb, like, how they're proportioned. They have, like, giant arms or giant legs.
Yeah, everyone has kind of distorted hands.
Yeah, like massive hands or that have massive heads. That feels like a very post-impressionism sort of aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I feel like it actually does well to marry all these styles into one, like, sort of aesthetic that is meant to represent Pepperland as the good, whole-natured world before it introduces the meanies who are more sterile and they actually look more cartoony and like...
And they're more fluidly animated.
Yeah, they're like rubber hose.
Yeah, it's almost rubber hose animation.
It's like they're trying to oppose like the whole Fleischer sort of animated sort of things.
Also, I like how the Blue Meanie is introduced and there's just an immediate colour error. Did you notice that? On his
Was there?
On his leg? It's like the first thing that happens.
So I know you don't like Peppertown in this, but yeah, the introduction to Peppertown at the very start, I think sets up the film really well, like how it's going to play out with the style and aesthetic.
Oh yeah, but I just the whole Peppertown animation style doesn't really resonate with me.
Also, the
I
the
like-
animation itself is not very good.
I think the
in this
animation on the Blue
film.
Meanies is very good.
Okay, the Blue Meanies, yes, but for a lot of it, it's like when their limbs move, it's very disjointed.
I think animation in this film ranges from really good singular gesture animations, like when they need to move their arms or do certain actions that involve more subtleties, to, oh, a character needs to get from here to here, I'll just drag them. Okay. And in that sense, some parts look really good, but they kind of get let down by how bad some of the other things are.
And just like, a lot of it doesn't have detail as well, which is the style, I get that. But a lot of it could be improved in that sort of sense. Like, a lot of the hand animation, if it's not a close-up of the hands are all these, like, this weird shape.
I think you can get away with that in terms of animation, especially when you've got multiple characters with the same sort of hand, because you get an aesthetic, like, you grow into it. But look, you're
still
watching
think-
blue people throw apples at Pepperland people and freezing them into stone.
It's
Nothing really makes sense.
It's a reference to Apple Records, Stefan.
Yeah, it's very clever. And now you destroy my room.
I still think though, like I get they didn't have much of a budget, but it should be a bit more refined.
Yeah, well, it's odd in the sense that if it was opposing the idea of refining creative thought as a philosophy in terms of how they produce this film, that would make sense why everything was loose. But the fact that some parts are very refined kind of counters that. So it just seems inconsistent rather than artistic.
Yeah.
Ben! Talk about your glove. It introduces one of the antagonists being this sentient hand.
You're gonna make
with
a
an
master
eye.
hand joke.
No, I'm not.
No,
But
and-
I just really like the design for it. Because it's just a hand, but like in between the fingers is where the teeth are, and the nail is the eye. I think it's just really cleverly designed, and it's used really well.
It's really funny. Not funny. Again, this is when I say funny in terms of like not funny, but how they were praising the animation of that 3D effect for the Liverpool scene, when I find this hand's movement through the planes so good in terms of illusioning 3D, because even that frame we've got open there, that is clearly not 3D, but it's at a slight angle that makes it look like it's in perspective. Yeah. And because it's an anatomically really realistic hand, that would be so hard to do. And it's not, it may be rotoscoped for reference, but its animation is actually not rotoscoped. It looks a lot more fluid and free-flowing. It's actually one of the best animated sequences of the film, that hand character. They have, again, those background assets have really gorgeous pencil renders. Like that tree there that looks like a teacup. I don't know why.
But it's nothing like a teacup.
I mean, the top part does.
Oh, okay.
Anyhow, that rendering as a little art piece looks great. But then you got the really bright blue characters in front of it, which kind of detract from how gorgeous that scene there looks.
And they have no tone as well compared to the trees and the mats.
Again, it's inconsistent. So you can't appreciate the beauty of some little sequences which are phenomenally gorgeous, because some other sequences are just unapologetically just bold and just weird.
Also,
I don't like how the meanies have mustaches. They look gross.
Oh, I love that. They have like really thin little John Waters pencil mustaches.
Oh, I don't like it.
I didn't notice until the end. I thought that was really funny.
No, they look gross.
I thought it was unusual how it's meant to be kind of a children's, kind of a whimsical fantasy film. And there is like fun children's music. Like All Together Now I think is kind of adorable. Yellow Submarine is a really kind of fun, catchy kid song. But the song they choose to open is Eleanor Rigby.
I don't know the meaning of that song.
No, I'm just saying, just tonally, it's this kind of sad, droning, kind of meditative, bleak song about, well, if it's not kind of subtextually about death, it does use death as kind of like a lyric motif. It's really sad.
Look, my brother actually walked in on me while I was watching this, and he was kind of very confused.
I would have rather walked in watching porn.
No.
This is. I would have had less questions.
No, and I was trying to explain some things, and the one thing he said to me is, look, I don't think anyone would have gone to see this film unless they knew who the Beatles were.
Oh, definitely.
And so that kind of
I
answers a lot of my questions too. But kids wouldn't watch this, or why would a kid like this? It's like, if you knew the Beatles, you'd watch this simply because it has that iconography and it has those songs.
So what did you guys think of the sequence in London when they go
Before we get to that, I think the opening sequence when Yellow Submarine is playing is quite good as well.
That's the one bit when it was so surreal and so like confronting. Once it hit Yellow Submarine, I was like, oh, this is fine. This is like my anchor to reality. Like, I know Yellow Submarine, it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's a warm, fuzzy song. And it made everything okay for a little bit.
Those aesthetics, though, because it's literally a title card sequence and it just has still images, it looks pretty. You can just listen to the nice music, look at the pretty, like, impressionism paintings, and again, some of the paintings in this film are gorgeously handcrafted. And you just look at them and it's like, this is nice. If this was all it was for about 5 minutes, that'd be great. But no, you got an hour to sit through.
Yeah, again, it is too long, and once the music kicks in, it all clicks together.
Yeah, like the second you add that music, you kind of forget all the discrepancies. You kind of enjoy it. The second that music disappears, you're like, no, come back. Come back.
There's this unnatural kind of stillness to the rest of the film. There's this quiet kind of awkwardness to a lot of it. And I think
It's not enjoyable. I can tell you that.
no, it's a little bit unnerving because like you're constantly waiting for, I think, something like you're waiting for the next kind of unnerving thing to happen. Yeah,
But at least that sequence is nice.
yeah. So after that, we're introduced to the Beatles in Liverpool. Liverpool is kind of our like the reality kind of surrogate. It's the kind of the paper cutout Liverpool is an approximation, like our connection to reality.
Yeah.
It's using familiar images. Like a lot of Pepperland is comprised purely of drawings. It's imaginative. It's from it pulls primarily from kind of the subconscious and
It's very surreal.
the imagination. It's surrealism. Liverpool is comprised almost entirely of magazine cutouts and stock photography.
Dark, grimy, rotoscoped people, photographs,
and I
lots
love
of
it.
football.
Yeah. Like there is kind of this bleak sadness to a lot of it, but it's weirdly comfortable. Like I found like, oh, this is a world at least I can recognize, and I found comfort in that. And I'm not sure if it's meant to be like you're meant to not really like reality and you're meant to want to go visit Pepperland, but I found Liverpool to be kind of like the respite throughout the entire thing. I kind of enjoyed the animation style there. I found that more comfortable and more interesting.
The fact that you never return to Liverpool throughout the movie suggests that they're trying to make Pepperland the nice place that you want to visit.
Yeah.
Whereas I agree with you. I think the Liverpool scene seems a lot more comforting. Except when it shows the football players and they look like clones of each other, which they clearly are because
But
they're
they're two
rotoscope.
production assistants,
But
obviously.
they it looks so weird because they're just two people cloned multiple times, and I'm like,
They're not even playing They're not even playing football or soccer. They're just kind of kicking it over their own heads.
yeah.
Something I really like in films is when they make like when you're talking about story and how you make a story with any films, not just animation. It's like you have someone in the known world, and then towards the end of the first act, they go into the unknown, and that's where a lot of the adventure takes place. I really like how in a lot of films, and including this, how the known world is all like dark and grimy and very monochromatic.
Yeah.
And then as they venture into a new world and everything, it's all bright and colourful, and that's really done to a large extent here.
Yeah.
In
But
terms of
I thought the animation was more interesting in Liverpool.
It's more cutout though. Like I think.
Yeah, I liked the cutout stuff more. I think.
And the fact that the colourfulness juxtaposed, like in the mansion as well, juxtaposes the rest of Liverpool.
Yeah, the Beatles live in this kind of little safe haven of colour and imagination.
I really like how
Even
colour
though it's
is
a
used.
like labyrinthian nightmare world.
To add to what Ben said, like it's really good how they clearly separate those sequences within palettes, because you can almost remember everything that happens in the film simply by remembering the sequence of palettes. So the start Pepperland.
That's why I think
that
everything
sequence-
in Pepperland blends in together. Like I find it difficult to remember what happens whenever they're in Pepperland. Everything else you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how they find Ringo just hanging out in front of a giant Liverpool sign. Just so you know it's Liverpool.
Again, Ringo, he's the hero of the
And then
story.
here's a line like he has a really funny line to a policeman where he's just like,
Yeah.
"Hey, would you believe me if I told you I was being followed by a flying yellow submarine?"
No, why would I?
Yeah, it's like, no.
oh,
It's
okay,
like,
then.
it's like, okay, I didn't think so. He just keeps going.
There's no concern in any of their voices. They just take whatever.
I like that. I thought,
is thrown at
I
them.
thought that was charming.
Ringo's-
They're completely kind of accepted the fantasy.
So after the Yellow Submarine finds the Beatles and Ringo Starr, the captain guy goes into the Beatles' mansion of nightmares. So perhaps we should talk about that.
So the
scene a bit.
Beatles all live in again a weird kind like a mansion on top of a hill where you go inside and space and time seems to fold in on itself.
But only through
They got a hallway
each room.
Yeah, they got a hallway full of Scooby-Doo doors when like you run in one and you come out another where every room is connected.
There was an animation error at the very start of it where, like, when it shows multiple things like hands and umbrellas and stuff flying through, and it shows doors opening, the earliest door doesn't open for the objects, they just go through the door. Why was John Lennon
I
Frankenstein?
was about to say, okay, the Frankenstein. There's a really funny line when Ringo takes the Pepperland guy into one of the rooms, and Frankenstein is on his big kind of electrical operation slab. There's a really funny line when he goes, "Is that like?" There's a really quiet. Is that Frankenstein? And then he goes, "Yeah, I used to go out with his sister."
Yeah.
It's the weird line.
Also, before we get to Frankenstein, for some reason in the room, there's a Marilyn Monroe and the Phantom and
yeah,
a
just
whole
pop culture iconography.
Pop culture just there.
for no reason.
And they even
I remember
goes,
watching
can't
it-
we get some of them to help? It's like, nah.
Yeah, I like that. It's like I remember watching and just thinking, "There's no way they had the copyright clearance to use any
I
of
was gonna
those
say,
things.
that's where
There's
most of
no
the-
way they had it.
That's where most of the budget went to.
yeah, just
getting
paying
those.
the people who own the Phantom the 4.5 cents. You need to use the Phantom license.
Just for that. But yeah, they go into Frankenstein's room, and then all of a sudden, lightning strikes the Frankenstein's monster,
It turns into John,
and he becomes John Lennon.
it's
For
great.
what reason?
I don't understand.
know.
It was so funny though because it's just this huge build up and there's electricity and the music swells and then just and it
Is
becomes.
that meant to be funny? Is that a joke?
I think it was a joke.
I think it's British humor.
Is that actively a joke?
I think it's just it's a subversive thing. Like it's this big build up and they're gonna use Frankenstein to. Oh, it's just John Lennon.
But why is he Frankenstein? There is the thing is,
Is that your biggest problem with the
No,
film?
I can accept a lot of weirdness in films, but there has to be a setup. There was no setup that the Beatles could morph their form into Frankenstein's monster.
Well,
fantasy.
Do you want to talk about how the fact that George Harrison lives in his own plane of existence?
Yeah.
That was funny when he's like, it's like, what day is it? Saturday. Who's probably in?
They look up and he's on this giant mountain thing with all these angels and stuff singing, and then they're like, oh, "What's he doing up on the mountain?" It's just, and then he
Reminded
appears
me a bit of-
next frame later in a car driving from the hallway.
They just accept all the fantasy.
Yeah, it's like normal to them. It's,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
accept it on a very mundane level where nothing, this magical thing could be happening, but they'll accept it as, oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they kind of just bicker. I kind of love it. Like they just kind of have this really like reserved, quiet arguments with each other.
And then Paul McCartney just walks in.
Yeah, so
That's great. He has no introduction.
everyone has a grand appearance and he just walks in. And he's
Hi.
like, oh, hi guys. They don't even know, like the guy doesn't even explain to them what they need help with. The guy's literal quotes is gibberish, and then he says something about blue meanies, and then he goes, that makes sense, and they're like, oh yeah.
I love that every time like he's like the Pepperland guy is trying to enlist their help and he's like he manically just yelling about like the problems in Pepperland, and then like the Beatles kind of will talk to each other and then they'll turn to him and goes like, oh, continue, like keep going, what were you saying? And he just goes back to yelling. Like he has enough presence of mind to like wait for them, but then like not enough to actually be coherent. That was really funny.
Again,
I like that joke.
you don't really need the dialogue in this film.
You don't, but
It could have worked as a silent film. A silent 5-minute
Oh no,
film.
no! As like a silent short film that's again just held up. I mean, we mean silent in terms of dialogue. Just having maybe the soundtrack would be, I think, like excellent. Like
Again, as a music video, this would have been phenomenal.
oh yeah, like I'll go back and watch. I might not watch the film again for a while, but I will go back and watch different musical segments. Like my favorite musical segment in this was, it's very simple, but like I'm very easily entertained. But when I'm 64. When the
With the time facts.
yeah, so the Pepperland, he takes them in the Yellow Submarine. They enlist their help. Let's go help help Pepperland fight the Blue Meanies. And
They have no problem just going into a flying submarine.
Yeah, it's like yeah, right.
Again, they just accept fantasy.
yeah, it's that great thing. Just like I've got nothing to do, we'll come.
Yeah, we don't have any tools or anything.
But they get in the submarine and they have to kind of traverse kind of the space-time continuum. They have to go through different planes of existence in order to get to Pepperland.
I love how no one actually knows how to drive the submarine. And they're just like, what do we do? I'll just press buttons.
And this is the section that has no plot, but it doesn't really need.
It's my
plot.
favorite bit of the movie. The entire segment of them getting to Pepperland, I think, is the best part of the
It's
film.
just, yeah, this is the most experimental part of the whole film. I
Yeah,
would say.
when it's mostly just it's a road trip. It's just pit stops with a song.
They go through times, they go through space, they
Yeah.
go through everything.
and everything even goes into itself.
Yeah, and they do it in a really bizarre and unique way. Like when it shows them, they go through time in which they go backwards in time, going forwards in time, and they grow. When they go forwards in time, they grow really long beards.
Speaking of time, do you want to get into that then? That
Yeah,
song?
their first little. We won't go through every stop, of
Yeah, I
course,
know.
but like the first one, which is my favorite musical number, is When I'm 64, and they traverse this plane of existence that is, like they say, is governed by Einstein's law of special relativity. I guess the universe itself is governed by that, but anyway, it's this really creative sequence about chronology and aging, and like the Beatles kind of jump back and forth between, like, in terms of how old they are. They'll be kids in one shot, and then they'll grow old instantaneously, and then they'll look out the window and wave at past versions of themselves who are looping backwards in time. It's really creative.
The only thing is, this song is just, for some reason, littered with facts about time.
I loved it. Like he said, like they sing the song When I'm 64, and Paul McCartney starts singing it. And there's this really cute bit, like, towards the end, that there's like this little text pop up on the screen that says, like, 64 years is however many million minutes.
Here we go.
Okay, a little text caption appears on the screen that says 64 years is 33,661,440 minutes, and 1 minute is a long time. And then they go and demonstrate how long 1 minute is by doing, like, a gradual count up with really creative ways of displaying numbers, and they go up to 60 and then to 64.
I like that.
Yeah, that was great. It was super creative. It was really cute. It felt like that's one when it felt the most kind of demonstrably like a children's entertainment.
And I felt like all the graphic artists working on this film really got to show their stuff during this sequence as well.
Yeah, a lot of like little like silly experimental ways of showing numbers with like patterns, and there's the sequence when just in the like all of the 40s for 10 is just like this psychedelic pattern that changes it in every beat.
A lot of typography work within the film is really well done, whether it be the 3D effects or the movement effects. They really go creative with how they can use typography in an interesting and visual way.
Yeah, I loved that. I thought that
same.
sequence was fantastic.
And also during just before that sequence, we get them going around a clock with numbers, and then they like go up with it as well.
Yeah,
this whole podcast has got to be us struggling to like explain psychedelic imagery. Like, I think we'll give like recommendations at the end, but I think it's definitely worth at least just Google, like, looking up the bits on the internet, like the music video portions.
Yeah, definitely.
I think everybody needs to should see it. If you, I mean, if you like animation, that's why you're listening to this, or you know us. I mean, that's everybody who's listening to this.
But yeah, after this musical sequence, Ringo gets tossed into the void and no one cares. They literally...
Ringo was not missed by the Beatles.
So you explain it, because you explained it really well before.
I can't explain.
So he presses a button, and then he
just ejects out, and they're just like, oh no, there goes Ringo.
And the only person...
The only one who's concerned is Paul. He's just like, oh no, we should probably go back. It's like, nah, we can't.
But the
It's
rest,
lost
everyone,
now.
they just don't care
And then
about him.
throughout the next sequence, because they're stuck in this land with all these monsters that remind me of where the wild things are in terms of how weird they look.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
That's where it has the vacuum monster that keeps sucking everything up.
Do you remember the SpongeBob SquarePants movie when they go into the
Oh,
abyss?
It reminded me of that too.
A little bit like that, yeah.
But yeah, they're going in this yellow submarine trying to traverse all those monsters. And then occasionally they'd be like, oh, look, there's Ringo again. And Ringo's like holding for dear life on this thing, just like, help me, guys. And like, oh, there he
Did
goes.
you not like that? Because I found that funny.
I found that
It
funny.
was funny, yeah. Just this complete apathy towards Ringo's life-threatening situation.
Again, Ringo is very much the emotional heart in terms of he's the first one introduced. He's the main character, but he also has the most horrendous character design. His eyes are nightmare voids.
Yeah, his eyes, like, everyone else has quite traditionally, we're looking at the box art here, but has quite traditionally drawn eyeballs. Ringo has like these black voids around his
And then
eyes.
white pupils. Like, what is that? Who thought, yep, that's Ringo?
Like, they all look like themselves. Like, you can all tell who they are.
Yeah, most of the time you can tell them apart, which is good.
But yeah, very,
I will say the face
I think
animation...
Paul's unpleasant. Because Paul's an attractive guy, and it's like difficult to make that man look that bad.
But he looks the most normal, I thought. He looked like a cherub from those 40s.
I think John looks the
cartoons.
most normal. Do you
John
reckon?
just... he's just...
John looks like a cartoon I would draw.
But I want to say the facial animation for them is not good.
non-existent. Not good. It's non-existent.
Yeah,
it's literally just like kind of flat.
Yeah, like the facial animation is very stilted, but like the fluidity is in the like bodily proportions and how
And
they
the
move.
psychedelic imagery as well.
Yeah.
So after that, literally, because
The vacuum thing sucks everything up.
because Ringo angers it or whatever. Doesn't he anger it?
No, it's just going on a rampage. I don't know what to do. The vacuum thing eats all of existence and leaves a white background. And in the Yellow Submarine, they're here in this white world, and they're like, oh no, we're out of fuel. What do we do? They see this guy, and they're like, oh, we'll ask him if he knows this fuel. They look at him. He's this little, like, he looks like a meatball with a mask and arms flailing around. And he basically says, oh yeah, I know how to fix your engine. No problem. Give it here. And he's like, oh yeah, I know a lot of things. I know this. And they're like, oh, you're like a... What are you? You're like a man. A nowhere man.
man.
Nowhere man. And then they just sing this song.
I really liked this sequence though,
You
with
did?
everything trailing behind them, like the background appearing.
That was cool, where it showed like psychedelic colors of movement, and then it would show their character models appearing through the color.
yeah.
That was a nice blending.
Yeah.
But a very lazy way of padding time in that sequence was where they just played that
reverse
exact
it, yeah.
thing, but in reverse.
Yeah, but still, the animation for that and like the idea behind that, I really enjoyed.
But again, in terms of context, it feels so counterproductive because after they sing this song about a nowhere man being really sad by themselves and they leave him crying, they just go, well, let's go. And Ringo goes like, but what about him? He seems happy enough. He's crying in a circle and they're like, oh, he's fine.
It was funny.
Again, they're full of apathy.
In terms of writing, just in general, I don't even like these characters. I'm siding with Ringo simply because everyone hates him. But everyone else is just like, oh yeah, whatever.
I'd have to agree with you there, Steph.
Like they sing about love and all these sort of nice, warm emotions, and then they just look at this nowhere man guy crying, and they're just like, he's all right, whatever.
And then the Nowhere Man saves them by fixing the propeller.
Yeah, the nowhere man saves most of them during the film.
I really like the introduction of Nowhere Man. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
I like we spoke about this earlier. But
Jeremy Hillary Boob, PhD.
it's really funny because he when he introduces him, he gives each Beatle a card with one of his names on it, but they read it out of order. Thought that was funny. I liked how kind of scatterbrained and like intelligent he was. I liked how he said like he was both simultaneously like writing and reviewing his own book. Like he kind of perceives time in like this weird non-linear fashion.
And
when
speaking in poetry as well, which was a nice change of pace compared to everyone else.
he's terrifyingly designed.
But most of the characters are
But
terrifyingly
again, most of the
designed.
characters are, and I thought just the way just all his actions were, I think, really creative. There's a huge seizure warning when they look at that rotating 3D cube.
Yeah, some of the color transitions are very like.
That was the only bit when I thought
Distracting.
that would have definitely killed one or two people
Yeah.
back in
Yeah, if
1968.
you get seizures or something, just don't watch this film.
I think most of it is manageable. There's a bit when there's like a rotating animated cube where each frame the cube is a different color, and yeah, that would kill you dead. But yeah, really like Jeremy, the Nowhere Man. I
But
like how
his gestural animation, how he moves his body weight around, I thought was the best animated part of the film in terms of characters.
Yeah, Jeremy was the best animated character.
And again,
definitely.
he has that beautiful, like quintessential, just British, mundane, domestic name. Like he's this fantastical creature, and throughout the whole thing, there's just like, "Where's Jeremy?"
Or they
It's
call him
funny.
Where's Boob.
Yeah. It's
Actually,
cute.
they use the only name they don't use is PhD. They don't call him PhD.
But that's his title. He has a PhD.
Yeah, but they don't say
He's
that.
done his doctorate somehow.
Doctorate in poetry, probably.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
They also did like a really nice during the Nowhere song. They did a really nice like, not rainbow, but rainbow colored
Tunnel.
tunnel.
It's like
thing?
a tunnel
Yeah.
that looks 3D, and if it was made nowadays, it would be like a 3D
Yes, it would. But it
tunnel
was
that's just a plane.
completely hand done.
It's hand done, and it looks really great. It's so
so
consistent.
I'm guessing they just used like a timing chart for all the lines.
Yeah.
Like they had so we'll just make a timing chart and make all the lines follow that.
But I
it's
find it so odd that background assets like that can have such precise articulation to it, and then your foreground characters, they just say, oh yeah, just do whatever, have their legs like 5 stories tall and make them just flip over, I don't care. Like, it seems really inconsistent to how that's managed. And like, in terms of like a singular voice, because ultimately in a film you want a singular voice heard just to make it seem like it's consistent. And sometimes it works, sometimes it's just... You don't know where to look. Like, it's like, well, I like the background. Should I just be paying attention to the backgrounds?
What do you want to talk about next, Michael?
I don't actually have any notes until the end because from this point on,
The Lucy in the Sky song. This
This
one.
one, yeah.
I love the color sequencing and how they use that stylistic rotoscoping they were
I
talking
love the
about.
whole thing about. It's just usually with rotoscope, it's just used for like trying to get precise movements. But for this, it's adding that realism to this very stylized color is really interesting, and it's also a bit seizure inducing.
Also,
as well.
Yeah. But I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
For me, this song is one of my favorite of the Beatles songs, and because of what it's about and whatnot, this scene felt like a music video. And the fact that it had
definitely.
little
Yeah.
cuts of John actually singing, I was like, if you cut this out, make it a music video, I'd love it. I'd just be like, yep, that's a good music video for this song because it really reflects that state of mind.
Actually, I think this is the most music video section of all the other songs.
But what I don't like in when it does do these musical sequences is when it says something like, oh, they'll sing like, oh, there's clouds in the sky or there's diamonds in the sky or something like that. They'll be like, oh, let's show a diamond because that's what the lyrics say.
Hey,
It's like-
look. Back when I was doing Lego stop motion videos for the songs that I did 2 Green Day ones, I did do that sort of stuff, make everything very literal.
Yeah, but like you weren't like, I don't know, 30 years old. Like some of this stuff is
that's
gorgeous.
amazing. I like that. Yeah, that's
How it uses color and that looks like a post-impressionist piece.
This feels like
We're watching it as we're...
Yeah, just so we can remember
you could
sequences.
play Take on Me over this, and it
Oh,
would
you
fit.
definitely could. But yeah, it just uses color and rotoscoping in such a unique way.
Really interesting compositions in this sequence and how they distort things. Like, there's this moment at the moment where it shows like a rotoscoped horse walking across this plateau, and its colors like are a mirror of change every single frame.
But yeah, it's just... I'll definitely look up this sequence if you don't plan on watching it.
Just to see how it's been how the song and the atmosphere has been interpreted in such a vivid and a unique sort of way.
Some of it is a bit messy, but overall, it's really stunning.
Yeah, but that's kind of the style,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Like, it's funny when you watch it, when you watch some of these scenes out without music, it looks like the sort of videos you would see in an art gallery that just play on the things behind
Yes,
you.
it does,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Showcasing just like moving like assets.
Again, that ties into all like how this is very experimental, getting artists to work
Oh,
on
it
this and
does
everything.
feel like that.
It
Yeah.
very much feels like they're art pieces with movement. And
Maybe
then when you
maybe
add
art
that-
galleries just take music videos and take the music out.
I just take this film.
All right, so yeah, like I want to talk.
The
Oh.
next good sequence, I think, is when they go into this world of holes and dots and whatever. And I think, like, getting all the dots to be, like, really well animated and in space and well timed.
In a perspective as well. Like, they use one consistent perspective. And again, this is stuff that nowadays we take for granted because you can easily work out digital ways of producing
Exactly.
that. But in the 60s, there's no digital ways. You would have had to work out, put a ruler there, work out where these circles go, and really just emphasize how perspective works in these distorted worlds.
Yeah, but
it's not easy.
But it's all like it's all bizarre, kind of confusing perspective as well. Like it's like an MC Escher kind of painting. Where
Yeah.
perspective shifts within the same image. Yeah.
If you don't know MC Escher, he's an artist who really worked on how perspective works from different angles and really looked at exploring and distorting
Yeah,
perspectives.
had this huge affinity for optical illusions and especially like perspective-based optical
Is
illusions.
he the guy who did that famous stairwell
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
He also did the one where he's staring at like the mirror ball.
Yep.
He had an exhibition recently that I didn't go to.
Yeah, I went to that. It
Oh,
was
was
fun.
it good? Ah, I should have gone.
Yeah, this is, like, really playing with all the perspective and everything. And I think, like, the creativeness behind that is really interesting to watch.
But
I-
then
I-
it's immediately ruined when Ringo gets one of the holes, puts it in his pocket, and says, "I got a hole in my pocket."
Yeah, that is the worst part in the film.
I find it funny.
No,
But then again,
I saw
know-
that as like, no, this is terrible. Burn it.
As someone,
It's a bad pun, but it's fun.
as someone who loves bad puns, I love that joke.
It's a dad joke.
But yeah, then they
Then
step...
they just appear.
Or like a Mayan temple, yeah.
Yeah, after... They, so the Pepperland captain stayed in the Yellow Submarine as the Beatles went into this spotland. Then they step on a spot and suddenly they're in Pepperland and the captain is not
No
far
explanation.
I
The
don't-
captain's not even shocked to see them. He's just like, oh, they're here too. I'm gonna go get the apples off the mayor because the bad guys threw apples at him. Because that's how people kill people in this movie. They throw apples at them. They don't die, but they're drowned in apples. Because that makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense.
behind. Stefan, calm down.
I don't get why they're apples. What possible, like, it doesn't hurt them. They just got apples on them.
It's a surrealist fantasy film, Stefan.
They're apples!
Out of all people!
Apples!
So from this point onwards, I don't think there's that much to really say because this section onwards, there's not a lot of that psychedelic music video kind of stuff. It's more just the plot kicks in. It's the third act when
And
they
the
fight
plot
the Blue
was
Meanies.
non-existent to begin with.
So
Yeah.
I think there's only really like 2 or 3 things we can talk about. Like the all you need is love part.
Yeah.
That's Return of the Glove, and literally the entire premise of them singing that song is, oh, there's a big glove over there, and then some words come out of their mouth, and it was like, oh, glove. Let's just burn that G right there. And now
And
it
it's
says
love.
We can defeat the glove with love. And then they literally get all the... It's actually really great from a typography standpoint.
Yeah.
Where they get like all their words that they sing. It goes on screen and it blocks the glove from attacking them.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's probably the most standout animation in this sequence. In this part of the film. But yeah, it's really fun. And
This part
again,
dragged on so long when
yeah.
you're watching it.
Once they get to Pepperland, I think this is when like your patience starts to wear a
Yeah.
little bit.
And do you know what animation they repeated? And I kept looking
them running
away.
towards the screen.
Yes, they had like the blue people running towards the screen with guns shooting. That is horrifying to me. It's like, ugh.
And it's reused animation from the start as well.
And they keep doing it and doing it. It's like, no, it was bad the first
You're saying
time.
it's complete reuse. It just reminds me of that Monty Python thing where he's storming the castle.
Yeah, and it's just the same.
It's the
running
same shot of him
sequence.
running, and he always goes back to the start.
No, but this wasn't funny. This is that scary sort of thing where they look scarily off model. They're shooting. It's just loudness just running towards you. It's just not fun in those sequences. Also, whenever it does a close up to the meanies' faces, they just look horrifying, like so scary.
Yeah,
Oh,
this is the bit when that's like I think it's less endearing. That there's not enough of that. There's not enough of the musical.
I think it's also
psychedelic
because, as you said before, it's the film in what's this land called? Pepperland.
Pepperland.
Everything's white in the background. And it basically goes, okay, we're enough with the gorgeous background assets. We're going to focus on our characters. And it's like, no, your characters are crap.
That was
They
a
look
mistake.
terrible.
Yeah, no, I really like. It may have been again. This was made in 11 months as per the booklet, but
Which is
I
a
really-
phenomenal achievement.
Oh yeah, but I really feel like this could have maybe done with like a really psychedelic, colorful background map.
I reckon they just should have ended it at them getting out of the Yellow Submarine and just been like, oh, look, Ringo saved the world, I guess.
There's something so like just stark and unpleasant about
Yeah.
the white as a primary color.
Mm.
I mean, not as a primary color, but as a
As a
you know what I mean.
color that's shown the most throughout.
Yeah,
the
white is not a
sequence.
primary color. It's not a color at all.
No,
more,
but
more
it's not...
wankery artifacts.
You've also got to realize as well, because this is taken as a photo, because this is not the digital era, it also has griminess in the background, which adds that grimy aesthetic that works well. But when white looks grimy, it just looks...
It's just dirty. Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't look
Just dirty
nice. Like,
paper.
if it's like really white, it kind of gets that really bold that makes things look poppy. But here it just looks...
No, but it comes from that era
yuck.
because it's not digital. They can't clean
No,
it.
that's what I was saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, from a story point, something stupid that happens. So, earlier in the night, they throw a bagpipe down the hill, and then as they're trying to escape the blue meanies while they're asleep, they step on the one thing that could give them away, which is the bloody bagpipe.
I also like how when the bagpipe, like, they move it, like, a little bit, it falls completely down the hill and keeps making noises. That is not how bagpipes work. They don't actively make music as they move.
It's a fantasy land, Stefan.
There's
It's
not
not poking
a-
holes in the logic.
No, but I have to. This world is not set up that whimsy like this sort of exists. Do bagpipes have this their own
It's a magical
trajectory?
kingdom called Pepperland that's projected by an ethereal band that exists at the bottom of the sea.
And that band is the Beatles.
Yeah.
That was never explained.
You get there via trans-dimensional floating submarine, Stefan. Stop poking holes in the logic!
But that's not how bagpipes work.
Anyway, so basically the end of it is, oh, they figure out music can defeat the blue meanies. So they get the Sgt. Pepper's band, whatever it's called.
Look, I know they're the
and
Beatles.
then
Look,
and then they play music to get rid of the meanies. And then the meanies decide they like music now.
can I ask though? Like, I know they're the Beatles. I know this is about the music Beatles and whatnot. But as a film, like taking it as a film and film writing, did it ever set up they could even play instruments?
The Beatles.
No,
yeah, it didn't. They just kind of
have
like,
to-
oh, we have instruments. We
That's
had them on
true.
the submarine. It's like, no, you didn't. You never brought them. You came from your nightmare hall onto the submarine through who knows what plane, appeared in Pepperland, and they're like, oh, yeah, we have to play music. It's like, oh, can you play music?
Oh yeah, the
I don't
Beatles.
know.
Oh yeah, the Beatles are a band. We forgot. They didn't sing the entire time. They just didn't play
Yeah.
music.
Yeah, so, yeah, but It didn't set up they could even sing. For all we know, that was just in their minds. It's not like they sing when they're in Pepperland until that finale.
The whole thing is just a fever dream, and they wake up like on like a mountain in India during that like experimental phase of their like music careers.
Anything else you want to say about this film?
No, yeah, we should probably say something else.
All right, and then they defeat the Blue Meanies, and they all come together.
And the bloody boob guy, he comes back and somehow... what does he do? He convinces the
No,
King
he does
Blue Meanie...
karate, but he like misses.
Yeah, but he convinces the King Blue Meanie to be good.
I guess. And then
We never thought of just asking him not to kill us.
The Blue Meanie's just like, you can't understand what he's saying, but he says that, and then he's like, and then all's good.
So then the Blue Meanie is defeated through the power of love.
I guess. Also, it was kind of gross having the Blue Man and Nowhere Man kind of touch noses and they're like looking into each other's eyes. It's like, ugh.
And their colours
This
don't
is
work
terrible.
together either.
Just nothing. It didn't look nice.
Anyway, so that happened. So yeah, he they just ask him to like music, and he does. Even though that goes against his entire moral philosophy leading up to this point. And then it ends, and they're all happy. It ends on the same shot as the South Park movie does.
Yeah.
It is a musical movie after all.
It's really nice, the design, though, of the very ending.
Oh, the big panoramic kind of all cast like reprise shot. All that stuff is beautiful, and
Really?
especially that's creative.
I find it amazing when in the 1960s they're still able to play with saturation differences so much. Like here, the colours shift from like a light yellow to a really saturated orange or something. Like
could be color lenses.
Yeah, I know, but it's really interesting how they worked out techniques to do that before the digital era. Like that is not easy.
Oh yeah,
to
we
do.
look at this and just knowing that you have to do it manually is like
In 11 months.
Yeah, me looking at that, it's like, is it even worth the effort? My God.
Yeah.
Well, it's still popular to this day, somewhat.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that is really good. It ends with our contractually obligated live action cameo from the Beatles. I thought this was really sweet. I enjoyed this. It was just a cute, like, because they're just kind of like, they're boyish and kind of, it's like really jovial and sweet. And they just kind of say to the kids in the audience, like, let's have a sing along. And they do a little like reprise of All Together Now.
What I don't like is they make it sound as if they completely knew what was going on in the film, and they say little things like, oh, here's the hole in my pocket and whatnot. That would be so much better if they actually did the voices, but they didn't, so it feels like they didn't earn this. They didn't earn this moment.
It feels a little bit unearned. It feels just like they got there and just like the producer's like, here's a hole, here's a motor.
No, they're just like, so what's this movie about? Okay, basically you have a hole in your pocket, you have the word love, you're now a trans-dimensional being, and Ringo Starr's dead. Okay, go.
And John's looking through a telescope. Action!
Do you know what I find really odd as well? If you're going to do a live action segment, and I know you guys, everyone knows what the Beatles look
they
like.
had to. It was part of the
Yeah.
contract.
I know. But at least have them like edit them or edit the characters to look like them, because in the character designs of the film, they all have mustaches. Completely clean shaven here. John Lennon has mutton chops. They look nothing like what they did in terms of the
Ringo's
character.
pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
Apart from the eyes.
Actually, that's true. George Harrison had a beard in the film.
Yeah.
He does it in this shot.
They have their ball cuts here.
They could have rotoscoped on a beard.
But yeah, the ending sequence it's just, as you said, a nice fun sing-along.
Yeah, and I like when, I do like how it ends and they say all together now and every beat it appears in a different language. Yeah.
It's very unifying.
Yeah.
Except at the end where they run out of languages to think of, so they just repeat English and then go back again.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so fast, people won't notice. It's like, yeah, no. That's the first thing we notice.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought that part was really endearing, even though it's the product of contractual obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the Beatles' Yellow Submarine.
We all live in a yellow submarine.
They technically didn't live in
Yellow
it.
Submarine.
Kind of just used it
Stop
to get
ruining
from
the
point A to B.
moment!
What did you guys think of Yellow Submarine?
Again, my thoughts are unchanged. It's a charming film of the time, and like it has some really great aesthetics and animation, but there's a lot of it that just isn't the best. But you know, I wouldn't watch it again, but yeah, as Michael said, like clips of it I would watch again. Definitely.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm in the boat where I've gotten a better appreciation from it from listening to you guys talk about how its inspiration, how it kind of opposes that traditional means of animation and does all these unique things that are more artistic driven rather than logical.
Yeah.
But I would not watch this again. It's not something that I enjoyed watching. I struggled to get through some of those sequences. Yeah. The middle sequence in the submarine, fine.
Yeah, I knew you'd like that bit because, again, the whole basis of surrealism is you create realities that are...
And distorting things through metaphor and objects.
They operate on emotion. They don't operate on logic.
Yeah. That's fun. That's cool. But the second you try to bring it back into a more logical story, despite the fact that the logical story that did exist did not make any sense... It just feels mishmash and confusing and just weird. Like, it's not something that I would go, hey, I've got to spare 2 hours. Why don't I watch the Beatles movie? Like, I'd rather go, no, I'll just listen to All Together Now on loop for 2 hours, and that's a lot more comforting for me.
Yeah, I think I liked it more than you did. I do agree that it overstays its welcome towards the end. Like, I loved it, completely on board. Even though a lot of it is kind of weird and unnerving and surreal, I was completely along for the ride and really engrossed by it until the third act. Once the Yellow Submarine trip ends and they get back into Pepperland, I thought that was a bit... it stays with one animation style for too long, and I think that the benefit of a lot of it was that it kept changing things up, and it was always new, and the visuals were always new and striking and experimental. But once it starts to get a little bit too comfortable in the traditional animation style, once they're in that fantasy world,
you just see its flaws a lot more.
Yeah. When the plot sets in, that's when it's not the best it could be. But that middle section, the first half of the film, is just as a pure animation experimental showcase. I loved all of that. I thought that was fantastic. Yeah, but I would recommend it with reservations. That I think if you kind of appreciate animation and psychedelia and experimental filmmaking, things like that, you really enjoy the first half, the first two thirds. Just be wary that the third act does get bogged down in like the same kind of bleak, surreal animation that's I don't think as appealing as the more colourful and psychedelic stuff.
I just want to add one final thing. I was meant to say this a little while ago, but the All You Need Is Love song is the most telegraphed part of the film. Because, like, for the 2 minutes beforehand, it's like, oh, there's a glove. Yeah, like I mentioned it before, how it kept saying the word glove and love, and how it's similar. It was just, like, literally like 2 minutes before the song started. They started that. And I was like, when are you just going to get to the bloody song?
Maybe it's like a Dora the Explorer thing where they're waiting for the audience to, like, say... the answer, and they're waiting for the kids to be like, just say the song, you idiots! Love, glove.
Saturday night's alright for fighting.
And that's the end of the Yellow Submarine discussion. Hooray!
Sorry, Stefan. Hey, you made me watch Fully Cooley, so...
That is, we're even now.
Now that we've done that, let's talk about some animation news. First bit I want to talk about is Taika Waititi might be directing an animated Flash Gordon film.
I had to remember who Flash Gordon was for a second.
Flash!
Savior of the universe. We
don't have to sing every podcast.
But it's a fun song. Anyway, yeah, Flash Gordon is... If you don't know, it used to be an old serial that George Lucas used to like. He wanted to direct it, but then he made Star Wars instead.
But George Lucas is directing? Sorry, who's behind this?
It was. I don't know who originally created it, but George Lucas wanted to for a long time.
Yeah, George Lucas is big into that kind of old pulp serial stuff, yeah.
And then someone else made it. They got Queen to do the soundtrack, which was great.
How did they get Queen to do the soundtrack?
I have no idea.
What dirt did they have on Freddie Mercury at the time?
Who knows? But this soundtrack is pretty good. Even though I just know the one song. Based on that one song, I'm going to say the soundtrack is good.
I haven't heard the soundtrack. I've just heard Flash because for some reason it's on the Queen's Greatest Hits CD.
I think it's actually a pretty good song. Like, not one that you just, like, sing along to or anything. But it's just fun to listen to.
I love how you're trying to sell us on this Flash series by saying the one song was good.
Anyway... Like, apparently the serial was good, and...
Look, I don't know why Taika Waititi would start an animation directing career based on Flash Gordon. That's, like, the most obscure
not really like
thing.
a pulp filmmaker or anything like that, though. He doesn't really have a connection into that kind of like romanticized kind of Americana.
The
serial
only-
stuff.
No, if anything, he'd make fun of it.
Yeah, the only connection is like doing some weird stuff.
Yeah, he's got some. He's got this like kind of comedic, kind of quiet, reserved dignity
Yeah.
about him. He doesn't like nothing about him screams. What is it, Flash Gordon? I keep wanting to say Buck Rogers.
But the thing,
Rogers.
I think just off the back of Thor Ragnarok, like they would see, oh, he can do like some cool space stuff here. Let's just get him to
I
do
don't think
a Flash Gordon.
The
This might be,
was Flash Gordon like self-referential and comedic? I don't think it was. I think
I
it
don't
played
but
even
you
quite
could make
straight.
it into that.
It
though.
was very straight.
I think that's what it'll be
played.
like a subversive
Yeah.
kind of self-referential space.
But that's even if this actually happens, though. Who
Is
knows?
it as likely as that bloody Tarantino Star Trek film that was meant
Yeah,
to come out?
that's R-rated as well. There was a trailer for Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, and I want to talk about this because Michael likes comic book stuff.
I've never read any of the Teen Titans though.
Nonetheless,
Nor have I seen either of these series.
I have more of a context. I
Yeah.
like the Teen Titans series.
I've only seen some Teen Titans Go stuff just because it's on TV.
So I know for a fact that everyone really loves the original Teen Titans, because it just had a awesome blend of cartoonish animation, maturity in its writing, and some great jokes. Teen Titans Go was really divisive in that I actually love the animation. So cartoony,
Yeah,
so
exactly,
bubbly.
yeah.
But people hate it because it's not the original show and it's more of a kid's show. It doesn't have the same maturity levels. So this film tries to marry the two together in a Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans. Film itself, I looked at the trailer, I thought it looks fun.
It does.
It has the style of the old one with the style of the new one. It's got some great little character jokes. There's some really fun looking moments that I think I'd love to see this in the film. But then people immediately go, respond to the trailer and said, oh, this isn't my Teen Titans. This is not what I thought they'd promised when they showed that trailer at the end of the Teen Titans Go movie. And I kind of understand that in the way that if you look at the animation of the actual Teen Titans characters, it actually still looks like they're using the rigged puppetry of the Teen Titans Go film, of the Teen Titans Go series.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because it's ideally a Teen Titans Go series with a Teen Titans cameo.
And also, that's how a lot of things are animated these days.
Yeah, it's a lot easier and more efficient. But people really just want... They want something they can't have. They want the old one back for some reason. I actually thought the old one ended fine. I ultimately think this will be great. It looks fun. It looks energetic. It looks silly. I think it'll be fun.
As for people saying that the original Teen Titans in this trailer seem a bit too silly, I've only watched one episode of it.
And they're crazy.
Exactly. It's not like it's too kiddie for them or anything because they're teens. They do silly stuff.
It's a different sort of humor, though. Like, they had humor in
I
the
get
Teen
that.
Titans Go where if they're looking at something and they're terrified or they're, the expression, their jaw drops,
Yeah.
they'd literally have their mouth kind of swing on the hinges of the chin and then the mouth would fall off. That's the sort of visual humor that the original Teen Titans series did. Whereas Teen Titans goes a bit more lowbrow and does a few jokes that seem a bit just weird, like silly to the point of toilet humor, like...
Apart from the toilet humor, I actually like a lot of the Teen
No,
Titans Go
I do
humor.
too. I think the humor is
And
really spontaneous and
It's
fun.
actually a lot of it's really meta as well, but like in an organic way where it references other DC properties. It's like for some reason, I think Raven or Beast Boy or something, in their room they have a lot of posters from the Nolan trilogy,
Yeah.
of their character designs, which I find really cool.
I like the joke in if any of you have seen the Teen Titans Go to the movies trailer or even the movie,
I've seen the trailer, yeah.
there's the joke where they meet Slade Wilson, who was basically Deadpool, Marvel's Deadpool, pretty much ripped off Slade in order to make the Deadpool character. That's how Deadpool came. And they basically go, oh, look, it's Deadpool. No, I'm Slade Wilson. I'm pretty sure you're Deadpool.
Anyway, that is that. And then we completely missed this last week because there was just so many trailers. There was also a trailer for a new show on Cartoon Network called Infinity Train, and it's about a girl coder who gets stuck in a train that seems to go for an infinity length, and she just has to make her way from carriage to carriage, solving puzzles.
And each carriage has a different world.
Yeah. It looks pretty fun.
It looks like if you can picture a modern version of Over the Garden Wall. Like, in terms of, like, there's different worlds in a little spot, and each world has its own story and style. But it feels, because she's a coder, and the worlds themselves feel a bit more technological and modern, it feels like more more modern and sci-fi as opposed to Over the Garden Wall, which was more fantasy driven.
I can see what you mean now. Yeah.
And plus, they're both Cartoon Network shows, so they clearly have that clean line style that seems consistent with those shows.
That is the end of the podcast.
Should we get on what we're doing next week?
Yeah, next week we're going to switch it up a bit. So instead of me going next, it's going to be Stefan going next because Spider-Man comes out next week and Stefan wanted to talk
I wanted
about...
to cover the 2000s animated series Spectacular Spider-Man. It's often regarded as one of the best Marvel animated series for its maturity and plot, so I thought that'd be nice to see before the new Spider-Man movie.
So if you like our podcast, make sure to tune in next week for that and check out our other podcasts if this is your first time. We have descriptions below linking us to a lot of other places. And yeah, we are on...
Are we on more things now?
Yeah, we're on more things now. So we're on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podcasts for iOS, Overcast, Spotify, Podbean.
Jesus. And other places with low standards.
Podcast Addict, Podbox. We're on a lot of places. Wherever you listen to a podcast, I'm pretty sure we'll be there now.
And 90% of you, which again statistically is 3 of you, are listening on what was it?
iOS for podcasts.
iOS podcast for iOS.
Yeah, that's the one.
Which is the one I use. So I guess I'm one of the 3.
Yeah, and make sure to.
Thank you, people. I saw another person left a 5-star rating on the podcast. Then I went to a dinner and then found out it was a friend of mine.
Oh.
So if someone I don't know could leave a nice rating, that'd be really nice.
Yeah, just
I don't care
nice
if it's patronising or disingenuous, like a nice one.
Yeah, leave a bad comment if you want, but just give a 5-star rating.
Oh
please.
yeah, we can deal with the bad comments.
Yeah, and yeah, make sure to comment if you have something.
Just as long as they're directed towards Ben.
Yeah.
Because again, upon criticism, I will immediately quit the podcast.
But yeah, if you have something to comment about the podcast or you want us to review something, just let us know and we might get to it. Who knows? And that is all, everyone.
Hooray.
So as the Beatles say, peace out, mother effer.